Hi there, it's Alan. Welcome back to my channel. Thanks for joining me on this final part of the series discussing the creation of a Greek army from World War II, specifically around the bolt action rules. And in particular, version 3, which was launched in September 24. As you know, this is about me getting ready for the competition of warfare, which will be my first bolt action competition ever. Quite frankly, I've only had one game, actually two games. One that was a very stilted affair and one that felt a little bit more like a game. I've discovered that bolt action is a game. It's really not particularly a simulation. There's some funny things that happen. Perhaps some of that is down to me not understanding the rules, and I'm sure next weekend will be a bit of an eye-opener. But as you can see, we're pretty much done. I've got an army list that I'll run through with you shortly. But just to sort of cover off the figures, we've got 1, 2, 3 bases here, units here, all of 10 figures strong. They're predominantly riflemen. We've got an LMG team, an NCO, and then the balance of the 10 are riflemen. You can see the sort of colour variation that we've got from the different paints that I've spoken about previously. And over here, I've got my command group. I'm pretty pleased with the way that they've come out, to be quite honest. It doesn't take a great deal to lift the figures. I'm quite pleased. In fact, let me just get one of these heavy weapons teams out from around here. So what I've tried to do is create a sort of vignette type effect and still keep them compliant with the rule system, etc. So here all I've done is made some sandbags out of green putty, put that around the base just to create the sort of impression of more of a fortified sort of situation. I've used the kraut cover basing material, which I think looks quite nice, but I've also added some tufts. I've tried to keep those in keeping with a sort of winter period. Those of you that don't know too much about this we're talking about October, November 1940 through to April 1941-ish, and a lot of the major commitment from the Greeks was fighting the Italians in northwest Greece and effectively preventing them from invading the country. The Italians thought it was going to be a walkover, turned out to be anything but that. There were some extremely ferocious battles, some extremely difficult terrain and weather conditions to deal with, including pretty deep freeze, shall we say, in the winter period, in that winter 1940 to 41. So I've tried to keep this sort of vignette theme going on. I've got 2 anti-tank guns in the army, 2 light anti-tank guns. I've just used twigs out of the back garden for this one. Over here, a little bit more of an attempt to create something a little bit different. This netting has a historical basis. Plenty, well, I say plenty, but at least 2 or 3 photographs where you see larger artillery and similar using this netting to try and hide themselves from the air. The Italians and then obviously subsequently the Germans had a lot of aircraft that was quite often difficult, shall we say, to fight against from a Greek perspective, given the lack of resources on their side. We've also got over here, excuse me, the little L335 tankettes that I've got in the army. I haven't really done a great deal of weathering on these. To be honest, I quite often get to this stage with a vehicle where I like it enough to not to want to risk putting the weathering on. What I'm going to try and do is take one of the other vehicles and give it a go, and then perhaps come back to this, but it will be after the competition. Again, what I've done with my army is to choose the more experienced troops to operate some of this more interesting weaponry. So again, we'll have a little look at the army list, but I think I had a very fair comment from one of the viewers around these being captured pieces of equipment and therefore perhaps being rated as inexperienced. I went the other way, not just for gaming purposes, but in my own sort of limited experience in the military, the best kit was operated by people who knew how to use it. Now, you could argue that this is a captured piece of equipment and no one was very familiar, but they still would have used troops that had a good idea of how to operate equipment, heavy machinery, etc. The Greeks had Bren gun carriers. There can't have been a huge amount of difference between the two. Clearly, we're not talking about you know, something that's going to have an earth-shattering effect on the battlefield. I just wanted them in the army for a bit of fun. Historically, the Greeks captured 40 plus of these vehicles, and then later on tried to put them into an armoured division, or mechanised division, perhaps more accurately. However, plenty of, I think, plausibility around these being captured and then reused in fairly short order in the battles in sort of northern Greece. Just moving back a little bit further afield, you can see that I've got over at the back here a sniper team. I've got an anti-tank rifle team. Again, I don't expect a great deal from the anti-tank rifle, but it's another little bit of fun. And then finally, I've got a mortar team with a spotter. Because I based the mortar team early on, it's not on this sort of combined basing, but that's fine. It's sort of compliant within the rules, and I may very well revisit that later. What I've done with these figures is to always have one that can be taken off. So obviously, if I lose one casualty, take the figure out. If I lose two, I've actually got the intention is to put one of these figures back. I've actually got some doubles, if you like, from figures that have got a light machine gun in a similar position, or I'll just put an extra casualty marker against the actual base itself. But I quite like it being interchangeable like that. That's where we are. Not a huge number of figures, but as I said, I'm very, it's a bit of fun for me. It's a completely new period, and actually, it's not turned out too badly. And yeah, a bit more time, I probably would have done some things a bit differently, but nevertheless, I think it's going to look, or more than hold its own from a presentation point of view when we get to next weekend. And let's hope that we get a few interesting games and some results go our way. Thanks for watching, and I'll just whip you through the army list and see you shortly. Hi there. Right, so that was the army in terms of figures. What about the composition in terms of what I've submitted for the tournament? Well, here we go. The tournament's 1,200 points. I've come in exactly at 1,200 points. Very convenient because pretty much I used the figures that I had, but obviously adjusted them a little bit to comply with the rules, but obviously to get in on the as close to the target as I could, and I'm very pleased to get smack on. I've had the list checked. It's deemed to be valid and legal, so that's great. I'm sure you guys can suggest better ways of organising this, but for me it was important to have some kind of historical basis for it. I've spoken about this before, but it's based on the Greek 8th Division, and I've gone for what I regard as a bit of realism, or at least some sort of plausibility around the structure. I've got a company commander. Well, I've done that because we've got a company here. We've got multiple platoons. You need a company commander to actually coordinate that, hence I've got one. All of my officers in each of the platoons are accompanied by an infantryman. Now, you pay your money and takes your choice as to whether you think that's just somebody effectively assisting, providing a bit of anything from bodyguard duties to a bit of a carrying of equipment type role, or potentially a 2IC. But in terms of the bolt action rules, they provide a little bit of durability for that command function. Probably some of you are looking at this going, why has he got so much command? But, well, it's multiple platoons. Each platoon should have its own leader, and then you should have a company commander. That's why I've done it. Again, be interested in your comments about what you'd have picked. But as you can see, I've gone for a heavy weapons platoon, as you've seen with the mortar and the 2 MGs. An artillery platoon with 2 light anti-tank guns. That's really about having nothing in the army to deal with opponents with tanks. Even with a light anti-tank gun, if you're lucky from a side shot on a heavy tank, or even frontally from a medium or light tank, you can make life a little bit more interesting for them, shall we say. And I've collected the main group of, or in the main, the infantry are all collected around this this platoon here with the 3 units that we spoke about, which are an LMG and a loader as part of the rifle group. Then the remaining 7 riflemen and an NCO, giving us the composition of each squad. sniper teams, anti-tank rifle teams, in fact anything with a, should we say, a weapon that requires a slightly higher technological sort of basis, and a little bit more experience. I've rated my crews as veteran, purely because, as I said earlier, the best troops got the best weapons typically, and certainly those that had served for the longest. All of the Greeks are rated as tough fighters, which is an indication of how well they performed in World War II, and they certainly surprised quite a few people, not least the Italians. So that's it. That's the army. As I said, it is legal. I will be bringing it at the weekend. I'm sure there's different ways that we could have done it, and I'd be interested to get your feedback. Maybe I won't read too much of it, just in case it puts me off, but I certainly will look at it afterwards and see how we get on. But yeah, really looking forward to it. I'm going to treat it as a game rather than as a simulation, and I'll let you know how I get on. Thanks for joining me. Hope to see you soon on another project.